We are here finally with Dr. Andrew Hill of TruBrain, who has joined us despite some technical difficulties that we had earlier today. Sorry about that, Andrew.
No problem.
So yeah, by way of brief introduction, Dr. Andrew Hill, guys, received his PhD in cognitive neuroscience from UCLA in 2012, and his degree was focused on studying how attention operates within the brain. And he works with two companies right now that are focused on improving cognitive function in human beings. One of them is called TruBrain, which is Lucci's partner in this upcoming study that we're talking about in this webinar. And TruBrain is a startup neurotropics company. If you guys don't know really what that means out there, it's sort of brain enhancement supplements, I guess you could say, that promotes a paracetam-based neurotropic stack aimed at improving memory, attention, and sustained energy.
That sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, so we're very lucky to be here to have him on, guys. Andrew, if you could start out, give everyone kind of a quick rundown of your background. I mean, you're a pretty normal, laid-back, appearing guy. How did you get into where you're at now and have a PhD?
Sure, thanks. So as you mentioned, I got a PhD from UCLA a couple years ago in cognitive neuroscience. And cognitive neuroscience is this intersection of mind and brain to some extent. And most people in the field either study how the brain produces the experience of something in the mind, attention, memory, sleep, or they look at aspects of the mind that are affected by changes in the brain. And I sort of do both. As you mentioned, I study attention, and as an academician, as a researcher, I studied how attention works in each hemisphere of the brain separately. It turns out we have completely separate and distinct attention resources in each hemisphere of our brain that come together to produce the experience of attention that we have. But there's certain ways of optimizing each side of the brain. And there's certain types of disorders that can show up when one half of your attention system goes down and produces very strange, behavior, like you ignore one half of space, dress one half of your body,
Okay.
Things like that.
That doesn't sound good.
No, not at all. So, I went to UCLA because I was already into this technique called neurofeedback. Right. And neurofeedback is an EEG, a brainwave-based technology where you train up or train down specific brainwaves. You guys may have heard of ADHD. It's, to a large extent, an excess of theta, of slow brainwaves in the front part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. So, you can measure how much theta is in the front of the brain and compare one person's brain to a population. That's called a QEEG, a quantitative EEG, or colloquially brain mapping. EEG brain mapping is one of the core technologies we're using for this experiment. So we can talk more about that in a moment. But as you mentioned, these days I'm working with TruBrain. I help design the stack, the blend of ingredients in this nootropic compound. And on the other side, I work in a company called Alternatives Brain Institute, which does brain training using neurofeedback. And we both work with ADHD kids, stressed out executives, and have another part of the company that does a lot of work with substance use, including a moderation track for alcohol. People come in and say, "Hey, I'm drinking too much, but I'm not an alcoholic. I don't want to stop drinking." And we actually help them sort of regain control over their behavior. And as part of that, I do brain mapping and neurofeedback with those clients as well.
Wow.
So I'm coming at the brain from a lot of different points of view, academic, research, two startups. And the startups I have, one is very physiology-based, evidence-based, science-based, or I'm working with individuals one-on-one. And the other startup, of course, TruBrain, is we're providing a product that is more broadly accessible to a larger audience. Anyone who wants to perform better without loading themselves up on tons of hard drugs, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about TruBrain real quick, because part of the experiment is we are going to be testing whether or not TruBrain has the effects we hope it'll have. Right. So tell us a little bit about TruBrain.
So TruBrain, this class of substances called nootropics. It's sort of a newish, no pun intended, but a new word. it was coined a few decades ago, but it's only recently come into, the internet sort of meme world. A nootropic substance, strictly speaking, is something that improves your cognitive function without any side effects.
Right.
So things like Adderall, not a nootropic. Even caffeine, strictly speaking, is not a nootropic because of the cardiac side effects, because of how often you run to the bathroom when you drink too much caffeine.
Right.
But other things, would be considered nootropic that improve cognitive function or improve brain metabolism. And some of these things actually reduce long-term risks to the brain from aging, from cognitive decline, from age-related problems like inflammation or, even Alzheimer's or Parkinson's.
Right.
So, we sat down in the TruBrain team and said, okay, people are starting to take nootropic substances and explore them. And there's huge amounts of different things out there. Some are incredibly safe. Some are not so safe. There's lots of research chemicals. There's lots of herbs. There's lots of old school vitamins. And we thought, okay, those of us involved in TruBrain have all been taking stuff ourselves and have done the research, spent months or weeks looking over all the different compounds available and figured out for ourselves which were the best ones to go after.
Right.
And before my involvement with TruBrain, I actually did this sort of offline for many years. So I've been taking the ingredients in TruBrain for probably more than 5 years.
Right.
And actually giving my mom the ingredients in TruBrain for about 4 years.
That's great.
TruBrain's only been around for about 1 year.
Right.
So after several years of doing this, of saying, oh, you want to take some brain compounds? Okay, try this one, this one, this one. I get tired of writing down lists of the same, starter pack of nootropics to go after.
Right.
My grandfather wanted some, a bunch of my friends wanted some, and half the time they just steal mine, and half the time they take a list of things and go and laboriously put together their own stacks. And so when I met Chris Thompson, we sort of said, hey, look, let's try to make a product that is convenient, and that to some more importantly than convenience, the curation. What is in it? What do I decide to put in it? Do I want to follow the research myself to build a best-in-class compound or supplement stack, or do I want to trust somebody else?
Right.
And we decided that we would do that curation. We would pour over the research, figure out which of the things on the market worked best together, which had the best safety profiles, best efficacy profiles, and because I'd been doing this myself offline already to a very large extent, the blend we came up with in TruBrain is pretty much what I've been taking myself for years, with a few sort of quality improvements.
Right.
Like we version of magnesium that was a higher quality one that I had been using, and a few other things. But TruBrain contains, as you mentioned, piracetam is the core lifter, heavy lifter of TruBrain. And the other big component is CDP choline or citicoline. It's a choline source. And together those things, we think, work to raise acetylcholine, which is involved in memory and attention. Mm-hmm. We also put some things in for sort of cellular metabolism or energy. L-carnitine is an example. L-tyrosine is another example. Tyrosine is a precursor to the neurotransmitter dopamine.
Right.
Adding some L-tyrosine gives you more dopaminergic gain, or you're a little more awake, a little more alert, a little more checked in. And then we added some things to buffer over-arousal and stress that can come with performance. So like magnesium, L-theanine, which is in tea. It's a very calming, focusing compound that occurs naturally in tea. So we put all these things together and said, okay, here's our supplement blend. And for the past year, people have been taking it, enjoying it. I know some of the Lucci people are customers, part of the TruBrain team, if you will, and enjoying the product. There's not been a lot of research on piracetam in normal humans. There's a lot in animals, huge amount in animals,
right.
And even a fair amount in sort of specific cognitive issues, drowning, post-alcoholism, hypoxia, head injury, ADHD, mild cognitive impairment. But there's not a lot of research on normal brains, and it works without side effects, so it's a great candidate for a normal person, if you will, a high performer to take, try to get a little bit better performance.
Right.
And so last summer, we took just the interns who were already in TruBrain, a few of us that were, the founders, and we just did a little mini EEG study doing brain maps on TruBrain and off TruBrain 1 week apart, and showed that there are some brain changes that occur when you're on TruBrain. We saw an increase of alpha brain waves, especially eyes closed, which is a relaxed state, and an increase of beta brain waves, especially eyes open, which is a focused state.
Gotcha.
So we saw these, brain changes. It was borderline significant. We ran 7 people. But because we use brain mapping, everyone is their own control. So everyone had their own pre and post. And within subject, every single person's brain changes were statistically significant. At the group level, the 7 people we used, the stats washed out a little bit because some people changed in one direction, other people changed in a different direction, and overall the group sort of moved towards the mean, and we didn't get clean, demonstrable changes that were statistically significant at the group level. But most people had more alpha and more beta in their brains, which is an intriguing piece. But the brain stuff by itself isn't, it's interesting and it's good science, but until you correlate brain changes with behavior changes,
right,
you don't have a real finding.
Right.
And so we wanted to do a few things for our next study. One, we wanted to do it blind, meaning we wanted to have a placebo option, so that we're going to have TruBrain in sealed packets, opaque capsules, and we're going to have rice starch equivalents of the same thing.
Right.
So half of the TruBrain packets that we use for the study will be placebo. We also wanted to have a behavior, performance testing. And so that's where Lucci comes in. We're going to have people do trading in real time with a full head EEG cap or applied. So we're going to do, I think, 64 channels of EEG.
Right.
And we're going to have people sit with their eyes closed for 5 minutes and their eyes open for 5 minutes. And that's the core of my brain mapping. And I'll produce brain maps about baseline activity in the brain. And then we'll have them perform or trade using the simulator. And we'll see what happens to brain activity during that condition.
Right.
And everyone will come in and do that, in one day, 60 to 90 minutes of effort. And they'll come back 2 days later and do the same thing. And the difference is that sometimes the first day is a placebo and the second day is TruBrain. Other times, the second day is placebo and the first day is TruBrain. And some people will have placebo both days.
Right.
And we'll set it up in such a way that we don't know. It's, the researchers are blind to the TruBrain versus placebo status, and all of the participants will also be blind.
Right.
So at this point, we need bodies and brains. Really, we need traders.
We need guinea pigs.
We need guinea pigs. We need people who are high performance, and that's another. It's worth mentioning to this audience. The reason why it's so compelling to use Lucci's traders is because you guys are high performance individuals.
Right.
You are functioning to some extent at the high athlete, elite athlete level of cognition.
Right.
You have to perform. You got to perform quickly. You got to perform under stress and for long periods of time.
Exactly.
And historically, the research suggests that we do not perform very well under stress, and we don't perform very well under long periods of time.
Right.
So we're going to set you up with a full head of EEG, do a couple of experiments, and see how performance changes day 1 to day 2, just pure practice effects. How brains change on TruBrain versus off TruBrain. And we have a counterbalancing. Some people, the practice effect will be there day 1 to day 2. Other people, it will not be there because they have TruBrain the first day.
Right.
And then we'll have some people where we'll only have the practice effect, 2 days of testing with pure placebo, and they won't know if they've received TruBrain.
Right.
And of course, we're going to have all the people who are involved in this study continue taking their TruBrain now, so brains get used to the effects. Those of you who have taken TruBrain know that you don't feel it the first day. It takes 3, 4, 5, 6 days of taking it before it starts to really kick in. There appears to be some sort of reverse tolerance to piracetam. We don't know why, but it's a pretty well-known phenomena that it takes a few days of taking it before you start to feel it. And so to avoid that confounding our experiment, we're going to use you guys who are already either taking TruBrain or interested in taking TruBrain, get you a box, and then have you take it, for a few weeks, and then stop taking it a week before you come out to Los Angeles, and then we'll do the experiment on you, and either you'll do it the first day on placebo. We'll give you some tablets to take about 90 minutes before you do your recording, enough time for it to kick in if it's real.
Right.
And then the same thing on day 2. And no one will know what's real TruBrain and what's rice starch, except for one of my admin people who's not involved in the study. She'll do the blinding for us and then hold the blinding solution until all the data is in the CAM. And then we'll do some preliminary analysis, look at our results with our groups, and then break the blinding once we have some results, so we aren't tempted to interpret things in our favor. Sort of a standard way of doing a double-blind experiment.
Okay, so let's talk about if you're a trader that's coming into this. What are they going to learn about themselves, about their brain? I mean, obviously they'll learn that TruBrain, whether it might help them, it might not, but what are they going to learn about themselves?
Yeah, if you get a veridical copy of TruBrain, if one of your days is a real day, and it will be for many people, you'll know there's different performances. And after the study's done, I will share with you, okay, trader number 3, on day 1, you were on placebo. On day 2, you were on TruBrain. And here are your scores.
Right.
So you'll have real empirical data for a specific individual. That's one thing they'll get to really sort of quantify, well, I think I'm faster, I think I'm sharper on TruBrain, but am I really?
Right.
And so this will give us, each individual, some data about how and if they're performing better on TruBrain.
Right.
The other sort of value-added piece, if you will, for a participant is you're going to get a brain map.
Yeah.
So brain maps I use clinically to diagnose or to find the physiology underpinnings for executive function issues, attention problems, sleep problems, anxiety, PTSD, OCD problems, even depression. And so I may be able to, from your brain map, say, okay, you probably have some anxiety and it's of this flavor.
Right.
And helping you figure out how your mind and brain are working together might give you some strategies for helping you handle it better from then on.
Right.
I would take that data and then use it to do neurofeedback through EEG, biofeedback on the brain.
Right.
But if I find some anxiety patterns of a specific type, I might be able to recommend certain meditation approaches that will really eliminate the stress. Or if I see certain executive function or attention regulation patterns in someone's brain, I can inform them about, okay, your brain tends to do this when you focus. It tends to do this when you're stressed. And that can help you start to notice and get more familiar with the landscape of your mind under these high performance conditions.
Right. Right. So, got you. Okay.
A peek under the cover. If you're driving a car, this is your option of getting out of the car and popping the hood and have someone pointing out all the different parts and, okay, that pump's got a leak. This pump has some, a loose belt. Here's some things you may want to think about in the future.
Right, right. Yeah. And I can tell you from the team's perspective, we're all pretty excited to get, our head trader from our hedge fund and the supporting traders around him linked up, because we all have our suspicions of, what the issues could be or what the strengths and weaknesses are. And we're excited to see if the science, backs it up. So that will be very cool.
Yeah, and I don't know you guys ahead of time, so I'm doing sort of a blind read for your QEEG. I'm saying, okay, based on this data, I think this is true about you. And sometimes I'll be accurate, and sometimes it'll be like, no. And because I'll find 4 or 5 or 10 different statistical outliers for everybody.
Right.
And some of those will be really accurate, and a few will just be statistical outliers and not a problem. Right. So this is not a purely diagnostic test. It's almost sort of prognostic.
Right.
I'm saying if X is true for you, here's why. I can see it in your brain.
Right.
But if you aren't, complaining of anxiety or attention problems or sleep problems or stress or whatever, and I suggest it might be there, it might not be. Just a normal, variant. This is not a you have this kind of brain. Oh no, it's more like given some variability in attention, stress, sleep, I can tell you a little bit more about what might be happening under the covers.
Right, right. And I think, and we also talked about how, we're setting it up in sort of a competitive atmosphere, right? And so, my microphone just popped down because, we are doing it on a simulated environment because, we want to, as best as possible, control a lot of the variables, right? And so, having it such that each trader is trading against the exact same window of time, for you traders listening out there, you're going to be trading against the same 90 minutes as everyone else, right? So it's as fair as possible. We don't want, let's say if you were trading on a Monday morning and Apple went crazy, and then the next guy up is trading in the middle of the day, nothing's happening. We're not going to the comparison won't be as relevant, right? So everyone will have an even playing field.
It's also important because we're going to be doing recording all day long,
right,
on the West Coast. So the market's closed after what, 1 o'clock West Coast time?
Absolutely, yeah.
So we want to keep recording. EEG is robust and doesn't change much during the daytime.
Right.
So we can really start recording at 9 a.m. It's going to take about 2 hours per person. And we can still run somebody at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So this allows us to really sort of densely gather a whole bunch of data in 1 week, versus stretching the study out for what would have to be months.
Right.
And like you said, controlling for variable market conditions and the perceived performance is fairly key.
Right.
To get a consistent, comparison between people for the behavioral performance.
Right. Yeah. And so, guys, but, if you're trading on a simulator, everyone knows it can be a little bit easy to, just throw caution to the wind and just go for it. So we want to make sure that you guys are incentivized to trade, as realistically as possible. So we've created a competitive environment, right? And there's going to be sort of different stages of that, different tiers, but the guy who wins, the guy who trades the best, not only are you going to get the fame of if you do beat, saying Lucci and our crew, you get the social, proof of that, but you're going to get hooked up with free access to all of St. Lucci's education. And then we're also going to sit down with Dr. Hill and get sort of, the real deep insight into what your brain scan is really saying about you, and then really sit down and dig into the tactics that you can do, to address your specific issues.
Absolutely. So usually when I see clients, I do a brain map. It takes about 3 hours of my time between the recording and the analysis after the fact, and then I sit down with them for half an hour to an hour and discuss their brain. I can't do that for everyone in the study.
Of course.
I'll give you a data sheet that summarizes my findings after the experiment's done. You guys will all get that. But for the top performing trader, I'll sit you down and give you a 45-minute consult discussing what we have found and what might be some strategies to improve your brain performance, specifically tailored to your exact brain that we see on the map, and given the performance that you've demonstrated during the simulator.
Right. So that's pretty sweet, guys. We are probably going to be working with Dr. Hill outside of this, because it's important for us to invest in the assets that we have in the hedge fund, and our brains are our assets. But, for whatever trader, wins this, you're going to be getting the benefits of this too. So that's very cool. All right. Well, I think, we've covered a lot of this. I want to get these guys out of here with, some pretty just easy tips. If a trader were to walk into your office right now and he said, Doc, I got 5 minutes. Tell me what I can do to increase my brain functioning throughout my trading day.
Mm-hmm. So, there's really 3 things you can do in terms of low cost, accessible things. And, I may sound like your parent now, but sleep is the first one.
Mm-hmm.
You aren't sleeping, you aren't performing. And by sleep, I don't just mean getting enough rest. I mean having regulated sleep in such a way that you get tired at the same time every night. You go to bed, you get up at the same time every morning. So a good sleep hack is try to get up within 1 hour after dawn and get some light in your eyes, some sunlight, in that first hour.
Right.
That will strongly entrain your circadian rhythm so that you actually wake up in the mornings refreshed. Maybe it won't need an alarm, but it's a way of really tightly entraining your brain to it's called the photo period, the daylight cycle of the planet. The better you are checked into that cycle, the more you'll wake up refreshed and crisp and ready to hit your day.
Yeah, Andrew, I remember, sorry to interrupt you, but I remember at one point you gave me this explanation about how I believe it was you, that the sun's rays, for a certain hour. Can you give them that explanation?
Good memory there.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a certain frequency or bandwidth of light in the visible spectrum that is the brains are sensitive to for resetting our circadian rhythm.
Right.
And it's a frequency or a bandwidth of light that comes in through the air in great amounts when the sun is very low on the horizon. And when the sun gets a little higher on the horizon, the angle of reflection is such that a lot of sunlight gets bounced off the atmosphere. And so there's not a lot of that frequency, of that bandwidth of light after the first hour past sunrise in sunlight you get. So you can still reset your circadian rhythms if you get up at noon, but they're going to be very weakly entrained. Getting up in the first hour after sunrise and getting some of that light in your eyes will help your mind, your brain be on that 24-hour cycle, to be up when the rest of the world is up, to be sharp, to be ready to go in the morning.
And you know what? I started doing this, 6 months ago. You told me about this, and I did a little research on my own. And so I started going up on the top of the building we live in New York and getting this sunlight. And it was pretty crazy. I felt the difference. I mean, it was hard to wake up in the mornings in the beginning, but your circadian rhythm affects your hormones, which, testosterone is affecting your attention levels, your energy levels. I mean, it really relates to everything about you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So need a couple of other quick ones. The second one, which sounds kind of commonsensical, is hydration. There you go. Drink some water. Water is key. We are mostly water, and the brain is bathed in water. In cerebrospinal fluid, which is mostly water. A little bit of dehydration can dramatically affect performance.
Got it.
So not only do you want to hydrate, but you want to have a habit of hydrating continuously. Your bladder will get used to increased hydration. There'll be a catch-up period. So don't, if you're running to the bathroom every hour because you're drinking too much water, keep doing it. And eventually your body will adjust after a week or two.
Gotcha.
And the third one is I encourage everyone to learn to meditate. Meditation, people have a lot of misconceptions. They think it's a mind blanking, a checkout state, a state that has no thoughts. That's not really what meditation is. Meditation is executive function training using ancient techniques, essentially attention training. And there's a couple main sort of historical traditional forms of meditation. One of them is a focused meditation. You pick a spot like the sensation of air crossing your upper lip and just focus on that sensation with your eyes closed as you breathe in and breathe out. Whenever you notice your mind has drifted, and it will because it's a mind, if you'll start planning, dreaming, remembering, fantasizing, wishing. Whenever you notice that you've drifted away from the focus of your attention, of your meditation object, which is the sensation of air, return your attention back to that focus. That cycle of notice you've drifted and redirect to the object, that's all meditation is. That's the rep of meditation.
Right.
So do that for 10 minutes every morning. And after a couple of weeks, or even 20 minutes, after a couple of weeks, you will have better executive function, more stable moods, more sustained attention, quicker mind, decreased stress. So there's all kinds of benefits. And that's probably the biggest thing you can do to make cognitive changes, is to learn to meditate and develop a practice meditation.
All right, guys, you heard it here. Drink your water, get your sleep, wake your asses up a little bit earlier, and start meditating. The doctor told you to do it.
So maybe grab a quart of water, go to the roof of the building first thing in the morning, and meditate all at once.
There you go. Just knock it all out all at once.
Right. That's right.
All right, Andrew. Well, thank you so much. I know you're a busy guy. Thank you for joining us. And for the 30 traders that end up joining us, I know that they are very excited to meet you in Los Angeles in person and get involved in the study. So thank you.
All right. I look forward to seeing you guys next month.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.